Fittipaldo, our Steelers insider from the Pittsburgh Post Gazette, joins us now on the Fan Hotline, presented by Sullivan Super Service, Pittsburgh trusted plumbing and HVAC provider for over 50 years. Good morning to you, Ray. How are you?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing well.
Happy to have you. I'm going to ask you a question that we've been talking about all morning long, and you can't pick Russ Wilson. You can't pick Arthur Smith. You can't pick T.J. Watt. If you had to pick three Steelers that are going to shape the outlook of the 2024 season, Ray, three guys, who would they be? Good or bad?
Okay. I'll go Patrick Queen, number one. They brought in Queen because really inside linebacker has been an issue almost for, 7-8 years now, and it was a huge issue late last season when they had all those injuries and into the playoffs. Just think about how the Bills attacked the Steelers in that playoff game. They finally went out and addressed that. So Queen would be number one for me. Zach Frazier, number two. Again, you address a position that hasn't been the greatest the last couple of years. Obviously, with Mason Cole, it was a struggle for 2 years. So I'll go Frazier, number two. Number three, I probably would have gone Wilson one. So how about George Pickens, number three? He's got to step up and be a one for this team. Not always the greatest team guy, but there's a ton of talent there. So if he could step up and realize his potential, I think that would be a huge help for this offense as well.
Rank those guys in order of confidence that they'll get the job done.
I would go, Queen's done it. So I'd go Queen number one, Frazier number two. I just don't have a ton of confidence in Pickens just because of what we saw out of him last year. But there's undoubtedly the talent's there, guys. I'm not going to argue about the talent. I just wonder about what's going on inside his head and how he approaches, the game of professional football.
Ray, my list was similar to yours. I mean, I had the first two guys, and then I put Najee Harris over George Pickens, and Crowley had George Pickens in that top three. What about this guy? And he seems to have a lot of confidence, and I think rightfully so, is Joey Porter Jr. How do you think he's going to be this year?
Yeah, I thought Joey really came on as the season progressed. I think it took him, 5-6 weeks to get into the starting lineup. And once he got there, there were a lot of games, Dorn, where he was traveling with the other team's number one receiver. And that's what you want out of your number one cornerback. So, yeah, I think Joey can be a huge part of that defense this year. You guys mentioned it at the top. TJ's obviously still a force. You hope that Minka can get back to being Minka this year. Obviously, Highsmith on the other side. We just talked about Patrick Queen. Yeah, if you can get Joey Porter to step up and be like a legit number one shutdown type of guy, that's going to be a huge plus for this defense going forward.
Ray, I just wanted to announce something to you because we see you on the video stream here, and Doran and I have hand signals that we make to one another that we know what they mean. So when I threw my little hand up there, I feel like you cut an answer short earlier. I was just trying to signal to Doran I had a quick question for you to jump the order. That's all that was.
Okay, gotcha.
So now we got our hand. It's tough. New offense, new offensive coordinator, got the hand signals and all the verbiage down. Ray Fittipaldo joining us on the Fan Hotline, presented by Sullivan Super Service, providing trusted plumbing and HVAC service for over 50 years. Is Fatanu going to start the year as one of the 5 offensive linemen? And if so, Ray, where?
Yeah, I think so, guys. You continue to try to build up your offensive line with high draft picks. And I understand they were deliberate with Broderick Jones last season for a reason. That's because he was young, came out early, and there was still some development that had to take place before he got in there. It's just a different scenario with Fautanu. He's older than Broderick Jones, started 30 games at Washington. And I just think, let's get on with it, right? Fans have been trying to replace Dan Moore for years. I know the coaches have a little bit of a different, there's a little bit of an attachment there to Dan because Dan's been such a good pro. And, he's been a guy who has stepped up for this team. But there's a reason they used the number one pick on Troy Fautanu. And I think if they let him go a little bit in training camp, they give him the run with the ones, I think he will seize that opportunity. And I think he'll be on the right side, ideally, as long as there's no issues with him there. And then obviously you kick Broderick Jones over to the left side, his more natural position that he played at Georgia. I think that would be the ideal scenario for this O-line.
If the New England Patriots release Juju Smith-Schuster, should the Steelers be interested in bringing him back?
To me, Dorn, he would be like a slight upgrade over the Quez Watkins and the Van Jeffersons of the world, and I don't think they need that type of player, to be honest with you. I think they need a legit number two. I think there was a time, you go back to 2017, 2018, I think Juju was that guy, but he hasn't been that guy in a while. So, I think if they're going to go out and spend money on a number two, I think I'd rather it be a guy who's in the prime of his career. Like I said, I think they got plenty of Juju Smith-Schuster types already on this roster. I'm not concerned about the depth of this receiving core. I'm concerned about the top of it and whether they have a legit guy next to George Pickens.
Do you think it's more likely than not that they get another guy in here, or do you think it's the other way?
I think it all hinges on Roman Wilson, guys. I think Roman Wilson is going to have an opportunity this spring and early this summer in training camp to maybe lay claim to that spot. And if he can do it, then they might not feel the need to go out and make a big move. But I don't know about you guys. I just think, Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins, I think they could be good depth players, but I don't think in any NFL offense in 2024 that they would be legit number two guys. I know Watkins had that nice year a couple of years ago. Van Jefferson as well. He's a big part of that Super Bowl team. But, 1 or 2 years in the NFL is a long time. And if you haven't done it recently, I'm not all that confident you could do it again.
Cole Holcomb, will we see him at all this year?
Every time we ask about him to the coaches, we don't get a timeline, Doran. So I don't have a strong sense that he's going to be out there in training camp, and therefore I don't have a strong sense that he's going to be there for the start of the season. Brian Bacco from the Post Gazette talked to him last week. Cole was pretty guarded in what he told him, but he was confident that he was going to come back at some point. So, I think the best case scenario, maybe you incorporate him middle of the season, late in the season if he's ready, but that was such a horrific injury that I wouldn't count on him certainly in training camp, and I don't even think for the first month or two of the season. I think it's going to be a while before we see him. And I think there's a reason they went and got Patrick Queen, and obviously a reason they got Patrick Wilson. They weren't expecting him to be ready for the first part of the 2024 season.
Steelers insider Ray Fittipaldo joining us here on the Fan Morning Show. Okay, you got Joey Porter Jr. on one side following the number one wide receiver. You got Dante Jackson presumably on the other side. God forbid, Lucky Rabbit's foot, rosary, all that. If Joey Porter Jr. were to go down, what are your top two outside corners? Who are your top two outside corners?
Right now, it's Corey Trice and Darius Rush, Anthony Averett. I mean, I can go on and list the names of these guys. They're not legitimate candidates in my mind. I mean, I like Corey Trice as much as the next guy in terms of his potential, but he's never played. And, the same thing could probably be said for Darius Rice. There's a lot of intrigue in 6'2", 200-pound corners who have some nice athleticism. But, for Rush, I mean, he was a receiver in college until his last year or two. He's still learning the position. Trice has had injuries in his background. So I think you asked me if it's inevitable about the receiver position. I think it's inevitable, probably more inevitable, that you're going to have to go out and get Cam Sutton or Patrick Peterson, to add a legit corner to this group at some point. Not in the near future, not in the next couple of weeks, but I certainly think first, second, third week of training camp, I think you'll see one of those guys signed. They'll be the slot, the backup outside guy, and, we'll go from there.
Outside of Arthur Smith, which assistant coach needs to have the biggest impact on a position group?
I'd go with the new receivers coach. There was so much trouble within that receiving core last year just in terms of effort and, there's a lot of me-first attitude last year. And, I think that's the reason that they moved on from Frisman Jackson. They needed a new voice in there, and I think Zach, is a guy who can maybe come in and change the tone of that group. And, I think it's a big deal that, Roman Wilson was a high character guy coming out of college, right? Like he's not one of these guys that I think is going to turn into a diva. I view him more as like a Hines Ward type of a guy. So if he pans out, that'll be great. All those other guys have history with connections to the Steelers offense. Quez Watkins was an Andy Weidel draft pick. Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller were with Arthur Smith. So they know what those guys are all about. So I think they tried to weed out the problem guys with Deontay Johnson, and now they're bringing in more team-like guys, high-character guys, who I think will make that receiving corps better overall, if not from a talent standpoint, then certainly from a team-first standpoint.
And while Roman Wilson was the number one wide receiver, they were running that football. It's not like he was getting a huge volume in Michigan, so he is used to that. All right, I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you here, Ray, before we let you go. Are you ready?
Ready.
Zach Frazier starting the year at center.
Yes.
Who's the backup?
Nate Herbig.
Will Roman Wilson be the Steelers' number 2 receiver by season's end?
I'll say no.
Who's number 2?
Player to be determined or acquired player.
Let's go. I had a big time Austin Powers flashback there.
I'm gonna cut in. Who does number 2 work
Yeah,
for?
that's what went through my head.
George Pickens will be the number 2 receiver by the end of the year.
Oh, what do you think about that one, Ray?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go out and get Ayuk.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Will Pat Freiermuth have the best statistical season of his career?
Yes.
Jaylen Warren will have more all-purpose yards than Najee Harris.
He was close last year. I'll say yes.
Justin Fields returns a kick.
No.
He doesn't want to play.
No.
That your face there. You got to work on your rage, Ray. You're just dial it back a little bit, okay? All right, buddy. That's all we got. You got any more rapid fires? All right, Ray. Thank you, buddy.
All right, guys. Talk to you next week.
Seriously, just go take a bath or something. Ganja for the rage there. Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post Gazette. Well, my papers fell. I don't know what's going on with me.
You're fidgety.
I am fidgety. My brain falls out at least 3 times every. You know what it is? It's the 4-month sleep regression for my baby.
Yeah,
She's not sleeping as well, which means I'm not sleeping as well, and we don't sleep anyhow. So